Hello, Star Trek fans, and welcome to the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast. My name is Kim.
And my name is James.
And we're watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine from the beginning, one episode at a time. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we are on Season 2, Episode 24, entitled The Collaborator. This episode aired May 22nd, 1994. Before we start on this one, anything to say about the previous episode, which was Crossover?
No, it was perfect.
Loved it. Love all the mirror episodes. Like to see more of those.
Oh, the mirror episodes are just so great.
Yes.
I admit, I just love them.
But also, this episode has Evil Vedek Winn. Also love her.
Definitely a plus.
I saw her in the thumbnail on Hulu, and I was already excited before I even started the episode.
She just brightens your day every time she turns up.
Well, they only roll her out for the big ones.
Yes.
The end of the season, the beginning of the season, and then, I don't know, she goes back to being Nurse Ratched.
You've got to use your Oscar winners sparingly.
Right. That's probably true. She's probably busy.
By the way, in episode 18, Profit and Loss, you lamented the lack of purple in the show.
Yeah.
We did not seem to see as much purple in this season as we have in the first season.
Right.
I suddenly realized last week we had 2 Kiras in purple dresses.
It wasn't really that nice, serious dark purple, though. It was that kind of light purple. Not as exciting. We get some purple in this episode, though, that I am in full support of.
Oh, well, they definitely make up for it in this week's.
Right. Well, should we get started?
Absolutely.
In the cold open, Vedek Bareil is walking through a dark, weirdly lit promenade all by himself, where he finds a body hanging from the second level. That was a shocker.
You don't actually see the body hanging there.
No, you just see the bottom half of it.
Was that a little bit too much for network television?
Yeah, I'm okay with that. He sees Kira playing racquetball in her headband and workout outfit, but this is not that stupid skirt outfit that she was wearing before when they were playing spring ball together. Now she's wearing like capri spandex. It's very modern. And also she's got some weird high-top shoes on.
Yeah, it looks much more practical.
Yeah, definitely. He says, "Help me." And she jogs up the circular staircase and cuts down the person hanging, and the body falls to the floor. Bareil then turns the body over and he says, "It's Prylar Beck." And Kira says, "No, it's not. It's you." And then Bareil is flashed out of his orb migraine with a slight gasp. These orbs are so vague, but I imagine now we have to figure out what that was all about.
Yes.
And we cue the theme song.
The Prophets could just try to be direct for a change.
Yeah, that's never going to happen. Now we go to Bareil standing in his undies, looking out the window. I think they're in Kira's quarters.
Yeah.
Kira is also there in her sexy off-the-shoulder jammies.
Yes, we get a shot of shirtless Bareil, although I think he might need to take some tips from Vinod.
Oh yeah, work up those arms. He looks pretty good. He tells Kira that he's very relaxed staying with her, and maybe he'll stay a little longer, but she says he can't because in a couple of days he'll be elected Kai. And he says, "Oh, that," playfully. And then he says there's no guarantee of that happening. Kira's pretty sure that's exactly what's going to happen. Then he asks if she's going to vote for him, and she says she doesn't always agree with his interpretation of the prophecies, but everyone knows that he's Kai Opaka's personal choice to succeed her. That makes his face go all serious, and he says he can never replace her. Bajor wouldn't have survived the occupation without her. And then they make out some more, and he pledges his devotion to her, and it's all very soapy.
I think it would be incredibly difficult to have a relationship with a religious leader, other people who have such a strong religious commitment.
Yeah, it would be, because in theory, you would always be second in the relationship, not first, when there's someone who is this high up. And they do talk about that a little bit in the scene where she says, "Oh, you're going to be too busy for me after you're Kai." And he's like, "Oh, no, that's never going to happen." But in reality, that is what would happen.
Plus, I would imagine it would be like joining the royal family. You'd sort of have to subvert your life to the life of the Kai, because they would be the one having to... You'd be scrutinized as almost as much as they would. Yeah,
it's probably like any political job as well. The higher up you go, the less your life is yours.
Right.
I mean, unless you don't care about people, then you just keep doing whatever you want to do.
Yeah, then it's fine.
Yeah. Bareil and Kira are walking hand in hand on the promenade, and they stumble across Evil Vedek Winn with the Sydney Opera House still on her head.
Oh, that's a fantastic outfit.
Oh, I love it. She is talking to a group of children, and she tells them to always honor the prophets so that they will always be loved by them, which is like, okay, this is very direct. At least one of this group of kids is completely terrified of her. He's got a terrified look on his face, but the others look happy to see her. I don't understand why children would flock to this scary woman or why people would let their children, listen to her. She's so scary.
I might make a small correction there.
Yeah.
I think it's more likely that she's poisoning the minds of children rather than just talking to them.
That is what she's doing. And Bareil says the prophet's love is unconditional according to the ancient texts. They ask nothing in return. And Evil Winn says, thank you, Vedek Bareil, for reminding us how the sacred text can be so easily misinterpreted. Gosh, she is so good. And Kira is just glaring at her as the two of them banter a bit. Winn tells him the eyes of all of Bajor are focused on him. She says common wisdom is he is destined to be the next Kai, but the choosing is still 2 days away, and the prophets may yet surprise us all. Which,
She's clearly such a manipulative character, if she can find a way around things. Brilliantly written.
And this actress really understands this character.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You're right. That's the thing that makes this. We haven't seen a lot of Winn, but she so gets the character.
Absolutely. Kira asks what she's doing on the station, and Vedek Winn says, my child, if I thought the prophets wanted you to know the purpose of my visit, I would have informed you in advance. I try not to type in every single thing that happens in these scenes, but she's so good that I hang on every word she says, and I want to type in everything she says because it's so interesting. Just her calling Kira child over and over. I mean, there's so much meaning behind her doing that. It's just hilarious.
Well, you almost have to analyze every one of her lines because they are so subtly filled with barbs.
That is true. And she does it really slowly and deliberately. It's not like in a lot of modern TV shows, the barbs come really fast.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of read the caption sometimes even to keep up. Not her. She is just like really deliberate in the way she delivers her insults.
Yes, she's very considered.
Yes.
And I think the character wants to make sure those things hit home.
Right. Well, Kira makes a comment about increasing station security with her there, and Winn wonders what she's inferring. Bareil, of course, diffuses the whole thing, but the two women continue to stare at each other. Winn knows that Kira still holds her responsible for, as she says, the deplorable attempt on Bareil's life, which is because she was 100% responsible for the deplorable attempt on Bareil's life. So, yeah.
Oh, you are so right.
Well, then we jump to a little old dude walking with a cane through the promenade. He bumps into another Bajoran who apologizes at first, but then recognizes the old guy as Kubis Oak, a traitor who worked for the Cardassians during the occupation. And he makes a big scene, and that draws Odo, and Odo immediately arrests Secretary Kubis. As he marches him towards security, Kubis and Winn lock eyes briefly because she is always up to something.
And I liked when Odo recognized him. When he called him Secretary Kubis, it was almost with contempt.
Yeah, like, oh, Secretary Kubis.
Yeah.
Well, now we're back in the migraine trigger again, and we see Bareil as the new Kai. But there's a flash of light, and Kai Opaka, Naomi Asaka, appears. She tells him to be at peace and be strong. When he asks why she left them, she says, all is as the prophets will it to be. She tells him it's his destiny to walk in her path, but as he follows her, Prylar Beck, the dead guy from earlier, again appears. He tells Bareil to accept a gift from the prophets, and it's a box with a big scary snake in it. Opaka says you can't refuse the gift. Its venom will make you stronger. But when he grabs the snake, it actually turns into a noose, and then he holds it up. And then Bareil again comes out of the migraine trigger and he closes the orb box. It's like having nightmares every night. It's so confusing and it's so unpleasant and you just don't know what it means.
These are fever dreams.
They kind of are. They're very strange.
I guess they're trying to hint that something's up. Something was strange with this character, Beck. It's
something clearly that Bareil is struggling with. That's pretty much all we know so far. And it involves Opaka, and it involves this Beck guy, and that's pretty much all we know so far.
Yeah, there's some strange imagery going on.
And Vedek Winn, of course, because she's everywhere.
Well, yeah.
She's in everybody's nightmares on the station.
She is the true figurehead for the prophets.
In security, Odo tells Kubis that a mob is gathering outside because of him. We learned that Kubis was a special liaison between the Cardassians and the Bajoran occupational government. There's a new name for the government. Kubis says if it wasn't for the people supporting that government, the situation would have been even worse than it was. Maybe, Odo says, unimpressed. He did what he had to do to survive. But he says Bajor is his home, and he wants to go back now.
Odo does reveal that Kubis was Gul Dukat's favorite Bajoran.
Yeah, except he said he didn't like him, but whatever. You were working for him.
No, they were probably pals. They were at Quark's all the time.
Kira enters and learns he is requesting the right to return home, and he doesn't think she has the authority to deny the request. She says the decision has already been made, and that every Bajoran who was part of the Cardassian occupational government was sentenced to exile. Then she says, you all got off too easy, and she turns to leave. But he wonders what the harm is in letting him live out his final years on Bajor. She asks, when the Cardassians needed Bajorans to work the mines, whose signature was on the authorization forms? He says, mine. She says you had to know those authorizations were death sentences. She asks if he ever once refused to sign the forms, and he says no. This is why you can't return to Bajor, because it would dishonor the memory of every person you sentenced to death. Odo looks back at the guy, and he's like really slumped down now, and he looks very small in his cell, the way they shot it.
This is another piece of history I'm glad they covered. What happened to the Bajoran collaborators?
Right.
They were all exiled. I would have thought they'd all have been executed, but I guess the Bajorans were a little more humane in their treatment.
Maybe this argument worked on some people, that it would have been worse if we didn't have Bajorans at least trying to support it. I don't know.
Every collaborating occupational government tries to make that excuse after the fact.
Well, right. I struggle to relate to it. It's hard to know exactly how you would react in a situation where your life is at risk. It's strange. I don't know.
Yeah.
I kind of feel bad for him, but at the same time, I'm like, oh no, dude, you can't be coming back here like nothing happened.
Right.
But I feel bad for him because he's just like a little old guy. So I understand his argument, but
you're still guilty for the things
him.
that you did.
Totally. You're still guilty. Well, Evil Winn has arrived in Sisko's office. She calls him emissary, of course, because she always does.
Uh-huh.
And then she tries her usual manipulation, saying, there are people on Bajor who believe their relationship isn't all that it should be. This was so funny.
Oh, beautiful.
And he reminds her that she once claimed he was a danger to Bajor and he was trying to destroy her people. She tries to do a, but that's not what I meant speech. Saying,
that was great.
saying the prophets had sent him there to challenge their long-held beliefs. Now she realizes the Federation's presence is necessary for the long-term security of Bajor. She says she'll never oppose the will of the prophets, but of course, she can say whatever she wants about what the prophets say and want, because that's what everybody does.
Oh, yeah. She's an expert at that. Plus, earlier, when she twisted what Sisko said, I mean, Sisko put it on the table that they were enemies.
Yes.
And she just twists that into, oh, we were at odds.
Yeah.
You tried to have people killed on the station.
I don't know how to do that. I've known people who are able to twist words around like that on the fly, and I've just never had that skill. It's like I would just get too mad.
I think this is showing the skill of Winn. She is very good at what she does.
She definitely is. She's very good at being bad.
Yeah, and playing that game with somebody like Sisko, I don't think she's really met, probably since Kaya Parker. Or probably maybe not even Kaya Parker. I don't think she's met someone who is on a similar level to her.
Yeah. Kaya Parker and Evil Winn would have been fun to watch together, but we never had that privilege of being able to see it. And I don't know if she ever stood up to her like this. That would have been fun to watch.
Yeah.
The trouble is, so many people believed in Kaya Parker because they talk about her basically saving Bajor. Right. During the occupation. So many people would have believed in her that Winn wouldn't have really ever had any chance. So she was probably in her shadow all the time.
Yeah, working in the shadows.
Yes.
Oh, so she's a Sith Lord.
Well, she could be.
She has the moral standing of one.
Well, Sisko agrees to make a joint statement with her about Bajor becoming part of the Federation, but not until after the Kai choosing, as they keep calling it. She's obviously trying to use him as a political pawn, but he declines because he doesn't want to take sides in the Kai election.
Oh.
She leaves, and she's happy because he won't endorse Bareil either, which I think she was worried about.
Yeah. So she turns up to basically try and use Sisko suddenly as the emissary and this great benefit to Bajor to influence the election.
people think we're at odds.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, people do think we're at odds because we're enemies.
I think as well, good. This is another good point to how I always say about Sisko is very politically adept. Certainly for somebody within the naivety that we've seen from the Federation in the past. He clearly understands what's going on here.
Yeah.
That he shouldn't get involved.
Well, she's not really hiding it. She does that thing where she puts a smile in front of what she says, but she's not really masking her agenda. It's pretty obvious.
But I think that's the point. It works on most people, or certainly a lot of people.
Mm.
And when she comes to someone like Sisko, she still tries it because she's not sure if it will work or not. And plus, I think she's also smart enough to realize that Sisko's goal is to get Bajor into the Federation. He might be desperate enough to fulfill his mission that he would go along with her.
Maybe. I actually think she came here just to see if he was going to endorse Bareil. I don't think she really thought he was going to stand up for her in any way.
Yeah.
Because she recognizes that she lost that earlier battle. Yeah. So I think she's come in here, pretending like she's putting all her cards on the table, but obviously she's not because she never will. But right. I do think she just wanted to find out if he was going to endorse Bareil, and then she would have tried something else. But he was like, nope, I'm not getting involved. And she said, oh, how enlightened. And then she left. As soon as she learned that, she left.
Okay, I did not look at it from that angle, but yeah, it definitely works for her.
Yes.
Either way.
Exactly.
Wow, she's nasty.
Odo calls Kira to let her know that Vedek Winn has granted Kubis sanctuary, and he's preparing to leave the station with her. Kira calls Dax and tells her not to clear Winn's ship for departure until she gives the go-ahead.
Oh, so the docking clamps are working again this week.
Yeah, it's up and down. Then she stomps into security to talk to Odo, who tells her that Kubis requested a private meeting with Winn. They talked for 10 minutes, after which Winn used the computer, accessing some information from the library system, and then she called the provisional government, Drink, and informed them that she was granting Kubis sanctuary. So Odo is already trying to piece together what she looked up in the computer, and they see that she looked up Prylar Beck, who was a well-known collaborator. Again, that's the dead guy from the beginning.
Yep.
Beck was the liaison between the Vedek Assembly and the Cardassians at the same time that Kubis was the secretary to the occupational government. Odo says they spent a lot of time together on the station. They also see that she looked up info about the Kendra Valley massacre. And Odo wonders if Kubis gave her some new info about the event, but Kira's like, there's nothing else to know. Kaiopaka's son and 42 other Bajoran freedom fighters were ambushed and killed because Beck gave the Cardassians the location of their camp. Beck made a full confession in his suicide note before hanging himself on the promenade. She's like, Odo, you read the note. He remembers.
So Odo would have been the head of security then.
Right. And then in comes Evil Winn, asking to speak to Kira. They exit together, and as they're walking, Winn wants Kira to let her ship return to Bajor, and Kira says, oh, you can go, but if Kubis is on the ship, it needs to undergo a thorough security check with a molecular scan for nanotechnology, and that could take days, or even weeks. Even though Winn is kind of deflecting her at first, she eventually says, well, it seems the prophets have decided you will have a part in this after all. In exchange for sanctuary, Kubis has agreed to provide the name of the man responsible for the massacre. Beck was merely a pawn, and he killed himself to hide the identity of the real traitor, his superior, Vedek Bareil. The camera closes in dramatically on Kira's face as we go into an ad break. I think we saw that coming at the start of the whole conversation.
Yeah, we knew something was going to be up. Completely shocked Kira.
Yeah, she was absolutely shocked. After the ad break, Kira says, no one is going to believe the word of a convicted traitor like Kubis. Winn can't believe that Kira would risk the chance of having a collaborator as the next Kai. She says if it turns out he's guilty, the ramifications would be catastrophic. She claims that she was going to go back to Bajor and conduct a quiet investigation, which, sure, but she wasn't sure who she could trust.
She was only trying to protect the spiritual life of Bajor.
Right.
The way she delivers that with, this sincere smile.
Yeah. Well, she says she didn't know whom she could trust with such a delicate assignment, but now she realizes the prophets have chosen Kira to help. She agrees to keep it quiet until Kira completes the investigation. But before she leaves, she says, oh, and child, one last thing. I know you're under a terrible strain, but if you're wise, and then she gets full-on angry face, you will never speak to me with such disrespect again. so good. And she walks off. And Kira actually looked terrified.
That change in tone and the facial expression, the acting's hitting 11 here.
This is why it's good to have such great actors in any show, because it adds so much weight to the lines and so much weight to the story. You know, it's why you want somebody who's so good, like Michelle Yeoh is a good example. Yeah. It just adds so much weight to whatever the story is.
And the way she delivered that outright threat in such a charming way.
It was awesome. In the episode Playing God, where they said Curzon was abusive in his own charming way.
Oh, yes.
This is like a whole different level of charm.
Yeah. I think if you look at this scene as a whole, it really does show the skill and intelligence of Winn. She's initially coming in with sort of a bullying approach.
Right.
And she's not planning on giving up anything.
But she pivots when she hits a wall.
Right. She hits that wall and I can only assume thinks up on the fly a new plan and an alternative path to what she wants. And that is a fascinating aspect of this character. She clearly has a lot of skill.
It's risky for her to trust Kira in this scenario. But I think she knows that Kira will not reveal that this is what Winn is trying to do because she doesn't want rumors to start. So I think she knows that. And I think she also knows that, well, she obviously knows that she's together with Bareil because she saw them holding hands and whatever. But I think she also knows that Kira takes this collaboration stuff very seriously.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's still a risk because she could still work hard to cover up the true story, if she really wanted to protect Bareil. So it's a risk.
Yeah. But I think her logic in this as well is the fact that Kira is an extremely honorable person and is more interested in the truth than a cover-up.
But why would she know that? That's the thing I'm not sure of. Maybe because of everything she did in the first 3-part episode of the season?
I would think yes. Partly that, but I would also expect Winn to be someone who has files on everyone.
Oh, I see.
I think Winn strikes me as the type of person who would be very well versed in who her potential enemies are.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Plus, remember all these other little causes that Kira is involved with bullying the government to try and do the right things.
Right.
I would see that Kira probably had a reputation as someone who was reliable and is a solid character. So Winn's pivot is to basically use Kira because she knows Kira will do a thorough job and will be honest about it.
Right. I still think it's a risk because as Kira is someone who has done whatever she's needed to survive.
Ah.
And it's silly to think that suddenly she would behave differently.
Right.
And even if it's not about protecting Bareil, but it's about someone that she sees as a threat in Winn.
Yes.
That's what I mean. She exposes herself.
Oh, I getcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you could flip it on its head and say she might interpret the discrediting of Bareil and the election of Winn as a bigger threat to Bajor than the fact that we'd hang another collaborator.
She might end up with a third person as the Kai, which maybe Winn has weighed that as the lesser of the evils.
Because
like
Winn
she could crush the other person.
Yeah.
But not Bareil because he's too popular.
Right. Yeah, Winn could manipulate and maneuver behind the scenes, could continue her role, as it were, without too much interference. That's a good point.
And Kira does mention a third candidate earlier, but I didn't write down his name because he never comes up again, so we'll forget about him.
Yeah.
Well, Kira is shook at the end of this scene.
Yeah,
but
you could say that.
The next scene, she's questioning Kubis, and Winn is in the room. He's saying that Pyler Beck wasn't a collaborator, he was a messenger. He was in constant communication with the Vedek Assembly, and he saw Bareil come to speak to him the day after the massacre. They had some kind of argument, and then the next day Beck killed himself. Kira doesn't think this proves much of anything, which it doesn't, but it is a suspicious story.
Yeah.
Kira then calls Bareil for some info. She is a little uncomfortable questioning him, but he admits he came to see Beck the day before he killed himself. He also says, poor Winn. Her desire to become Kai has clouded her judgment. Kira says Winn is trying to ruin you, but he says there's nothing to worry about because he had nothing to do with the massacre, and Winn won't be able to prove otherwise. He was providing spiritual guidance to Beck, who was a deeply troubled man. He won't betray the confidence of that conversation, which does not help his case.
I thought it was interesting he admitted straight out that he had been to the station and talked to Beck. He wasn't trying to cover that up or hide it.
Right. Well...
Or as a good politician saying, oh, I don't remember.
But if you go back and look at everything that he says to her in this episode, he never lies.
You're right.
Yeah. He deflects, but he doesn't lie.
No.
And he doesn't lie here. Now we're back in Odo's office, and Odo establishes a link with the Bajoran Central Archives to get to the files of the Vedek Assembly. Kira's looking worried, and she tells Odo that she loves Bareil, which seems to kind of shock Odo. But then he quickly pretends like, oh yeah, no big deal. I knew that.
I was wondering when you'd figure that out.
Yeah, that was funny.
That was a little bit of a, yeah, I know that.
But all of this is for nothing because the files with the communication between the station and the assembly leading up to the massacre have all been sealed by a Vedek.
Uh-oh.
Somebody is up to something.
It's a good idea that she got Odo on board. This is a guy who loves a good investigation.
Oh, he loves a mystery.
Yeah. She should delegate him to do the legwork.
She should have had him try to figure out how to put the bombing on Winn. Maybe he tried, though. I guess she was too good at covering her tracks.
Oh, I expect Winn is extremely good at covering tracks.
If they just bugged the chapel, which I'm sure Odo would love to do, he would have had his answers.
You know, that's probably a ongoing source of concern for Odo.
Probably. No surveillance cameras in the chapel.
Yeah. I expect every week Cisco is getting a request for cameras in the chapel. No.
Cameras here, cameras there. Cisco's like, oh my God. You can't put cameras in the bathrooms. Although, that's probably where Quark is doing deals.
Odo just turns into a faucet or something.
Gosh, he hasn't done that lately. He did that all the time in season 1. I guess Quark is on to him, so he doesn't do it as frequently.
Well, we've seen Quark starts bashing things and tapping tables and that.
Oh, that was so funny. Yeah, that was in Profit and Loss, where he starts hitting things on the table like, is this Odo? Is this Odo?
It's like a smart move.
It is. Well, then Odo and Kira go to see Quark.
Yeah, and he's paying the wages of the Dabo girl.
And trying to rip her off.
Yeah.
Because he's horrible.
And she makes him cough up all the money. He says, I hate payday.
Yes. He's suspicious of them because they're being nice to him. And he should be suspicious because they want Quark to bypass the security seal and they strong-arm him into helping. We do hear Rule of Acquisition 285 here, which is no good deed goes unpunished. That's a good one.
Yes. And a very Ferengi interpretation of doing a good deed.
That's true. Odo and Kira go out on the promenade to wait for Quark. And Odo talks about the day that Beck killed himself on the promenade. They're standing like right below where he hung himself. He said he knew Beck and always thought he was a good man.
Yeah.
He said the one thing he's learned about humanoids is that in extreme situations, you're capable of doing terrible things. Well, Quark breaks into the files easily, only to find that the contents of the files have all been erased, so there's nothing to see. Now Kira goes to Miles for help, so we go to the big guns. Miles gives a whole speech about how he could put fragments of the deleted data back together, blah, blah, blah. Ultimately, he says it would take weeks to recover, but he might be able to figure out who did the erasing. And I will spare you all of the science nonsense that leads up to the dramatic reveal of the retinal scan. And ultimately, when we zoom out on the eyeball, it's Bareil.
Yep.
We all knew that's who it was going to be.
Oh, no.
Well, now we're back in the migraine trigger, and Bareil is getting another cryptic message. Pryler Beck tells him, I trusted you, and I needed you, and you let me die. And then we go to naked Bareil, because there's always some naked stuff going on in these migraine triggers.
I think that's why he likes to use it a lot.
Yes. And he turns around to kiss the face of someone we can't see, so you know it's not Kira. And it turns out to be Evil Winn, which was very creepy. And then we see Kira approach in her jammies from earlier, saying, accept this gift from the prophets. And the gift is apparently a knife to the gut.
Oh, she stabs him.
Yeah, so I guess the prophets are telling him that Kira is about to stab him, metaphorically. When he falls to the ground, Kyle Paka catches him and says, may the prophets comfort you, my child. And he closes the migraine trigger box again. He should really stop going in there. I mean, this is just getting worse. None of this stuff is helping.
Do you think he might be overusing it? Is he hitting the orbs a little too hard?
I mean, he definitely is, but the reason that we're doing it is because in the story, they want you to believe that he is uncomfortable with something, right? That there's something going on, but it stops him from doing anything dishonest or behaving differently in front of anyone because he would be good at hiding anything. Yeah. So they stick these in here just to do that, just to add that little conflict to the story.
It's a really nice way of progressing the story, showing these like dream sequences that show you something is going on without actually telling you directly.
Right. Well, the real Kira enters, and she is distraught. She asks if he really believed he could hide the truth from her. He says truth is not always easy to recognize. She doesn't want to tell Winn that he's the one responsible for the massacre. He turns away from her and says, the Cardassians were determined to eliminate all resistance in the valley. If someone hadn't told them the location of that base, they would have wiped out every village in that area, and that would have meant the death of 1,200 innocent Bajorans. Kira is shocked to learn that Winn was right all along. She says Winn is going to destroy you, and Bareil says, no, I've destroyed myself.
Wow.
This is what I mean. He never admitted in the scene that he did anything. He said someone had to do it.
Yes. That's quite a moral dilemma.
It is. Back on the station, Kira calls Winn, who congratulates her on a job well done. Bareil has withdrawn from the choosing and no longer wishes to be Kai, which shocks Kira. She says, I know this is painful for you, child, but you've done a great service for all of Bajor. Whoever is chosen as Kai tomorrow owes you a debt of gratitude. Yikes.
Yeah.
She hangs up and she steps back from the screen and she tells Dax that something still isn't adding up. She can't figure out why Bareil would cover up his actions instead of just owning up to it. She tells Miles she needs him back in the files.
A little observation here. When Kira tells Miles she needs to get back into the archives, he replies with, yes, sir, and immediately jumps to attention and runs to start working on these files. I thought that was great because there was this sort of level of formal respect for Kira here. And I think because Miles realized how important this was. So it wasn't like earlier when he was just talking to her about, we could probably recover the data, but it would take weeks and the rest of it. There was a real change in attitude from Miles. And it seemed to be he needed to do something really important for a member of the team and needed to do it now. What did you take from that?
I didn't take quite that much from it.
Yeah.
Maybe he was just bored. But I did note him calling her sir. That's the second time I think in the episode that he does it. He definitely reacted quickly and jumped right on it. Maybe she looked quite sincere in that moment.
Maybe I'm just overanalyzing.
Maybe. That is your job. Back down on Bajor, the choosing is over and we have a new Kai. Kai Winn. I will say this. The Kai outfit is a downgrade from her gorgeous purple and red outfit to this boring gold. Now it's completely dull.
Oh, I thought that was a great outfit.
No way.
Did you notice in the background, all the times we've seen Winn so far, she's had like hanging around behind her, like a purple minder.
The little purple guy?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now she has 2 purple Imperial guards.
Yeah. 2 monks. Kira gives her a little bow and Winn grabs her ear. Saying, her paw is strong. In time, you will learn I'm not your enemy. Then she says to tell Commander Sisko that she must postpone appearing with him. Of course, she doesn't need him anymore, so forget that.
Wow. She is so awful. She won't even give Sisko the courtesy of telling him herself.
She's going to remain enemies.
She's using Kira to tell him.
Well, she's got what she needed. She doesn't need him anymore.
I will add, if Kira was more of a smart aleck, she would have replied, no, you're not my enemy. You're an enemy to all of Bajor.
Well, that wouldn't have been a wise thing in that moment.
Yeah. Kira fell out of a window. My 2 purple guards were trying to help her and she just fell.
Oh my God. Well, everyone else leaves and Bareil finally comes out of the chamber. Kira says, you forgot to erase the transit files. The transit file shows that he was actually in isolation during the massacre.
So he couldn't have actually given the information to Beck.
Right. Bareil tells her to let it go. She doesn't understand why he's covered up the truth. But of course, it's because the real person who ordered Beck to reveal the location of the camp was Kai Opaka.
Boom.
And we slander my favorite Kai.
Ugh.
How awful. Kira calls her a collaborator, but Bareil says she did it to protect the larger population. She sacrificed her own son to save 1,000 people. He says he had to protect her, and all of this is the will of the prophets. So pretty much whatever happens, we just say it's the will of the prophets. This religion is very foggy.
It's a great way of getting around things. The prophets wanted it like that.
Totally. Kira asks what will happen to them. She kisses him and says, let's go pay our respects to the new Kai. The end.
Oh.
That is ugly. It's terrible. It's not him. He should have been Kai. He was protecting the previous Kai because he felt like it was important to all of Bajor that they don't look at Kai Opaka badly because she saved them all during the occupation. And also, he believes that she made the right choice.
That's true, yeah.
But he knows if he reveals that, how damning it would be. It's ugly. They should have found a way to blame it on Kai Winn.
Oh, yeah.
They do not think deviously enough.
That's where she should have got Quark to help. Quark could have actually put data into that file showing that Kai Winn was the one.
They should have changed that retinal scan to be Kai Winn's eye.
Yeah. Change the retinal scan, have Quark set up some files. Oh, perfect. These two are far too nice.
Totally. Well, we've reached the end of the episode. Do you have any over-analysis?
First of all, I think we'll start with the moral dilemma here. 1,200 villagers could have been killed, but do you really know the Cardassians are going to follow through with that threat? And in the bigger picture, killing of the Resistance, that might have had a bigger effect on freeing Bajor than anything else the Cardassians could have done.
Yes.
So in one way, I can see why she might want to save those 1,200 villagers, and Bareil obviously agreed with it. But at the same time, are you looking at the big picture of what it does for Bajor?
That's not her job, though.
Mm-hmm.
They're not military leaders.
Yeah.
They're just not going to look at it strategically. That's the way I guess I looked at it.
Yeah, I find it difficult to look at that and go with the collaborating with the enemy.
Well, also, I feel like, can't you just, call them and say, get out of there, and then you reveal the location, and then they blow up an empty camp? I mean, we never call anybody.
Yeah.
We had phones in the 90s.
Yeah, they evacuate the camp, and they leave a couple of people behind to make it think the camp's active.
Yeah, I don't think they really thought it through.
Yeah.
And also, the Cardassians, still could have blown up everybody. And I feel like we would call it in business an opportunity cost.
Mm-hmm. It's a horrible way of putting it, but it's realistic.
Yeah, this is a terrible analogy, but if your engineers are busy doing something else, it's the opportunity that you're missing out for them to do something more productive.
Yeah.
And that's the same here. It's like you've removed the opportunity of these freedom fighters to actually do the thing that they were trying to do, which is fight for your freedom.
Yeah.
And you've saved just a bunch of villagers who are not doing anything to help your freedom.
Right, who could be killed anyway.
Yes, exactly.
Plus, and this is somewhat looking at occupations historically, the murdering of 1,200 villagers might actually increase support for the resistance and might swell the ranks of the resistance with more people.
But I think that's the kind of thing that it's so easy to say when the people aren't real.
Yes.
And if you are truly the spiritual leader of people, life preservation is going to be the most important thing to you. I mean, I feel like I say this a lot, but I can't really look at it from her point of view because I don't have that experience, but I can imagine that someone who is a spiritual leader, the job is about saving souls, and you are even going to choose, if it's 2 and 1, you're going to choose 2 because that's the job that you have.
I see what you mean. I get exactly what you mean, yeah.
But this is a mess. I don't see how, even though Kira knows the truth, if they're not going to reveal the truth, I don't know how she can stay with him because Winn believes it was Bareil.
Yeah.
So now, if Kira stays with him, she's staying with a known collaborator, known to her, right?
Well, it means that Winn potentially now forever has something over Bareil.
And Kira.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Which is worse.
Right.
I care about Kira. I don't care about Bareil because I know he's temporary. Kira is forever.
Yes. It does raise a difficult situation then for both of them because Winn, she's such a base character. She would have no problems using anything against you. Yeah,
which is why Kira really needs evidence that she was involved in that bombing.
Well, she's too much of an expert to have any leads back to her.
Aye. Do you have any other overanalysis?
Oh, yeah. We're just getting started.
Oh, man. We've already been recording for an hour.
This is more of an observation. I didn't actually have any memory of what happened to the civilian administration of Bajor, so it was nice to get that little background.
About the occupational government?
About how it was basically exiled when the occupation ended.
Which makes sense, because if they went from occupational to the provisional government, that makes sense of where that provisional government came from.
Yeah, and I don't think we've been told what happened to them before. So I like that as a nice little sort of canon historical touch of giving you some background.
I really like these episodes that give me all that info.
Yeah.
Even if it's something that's uncomfortable, which a lot of this story was. But
Yeah.
I love that info. That's that sort of world building stuff that's really interesting.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I love that.
I don't always, I guess, but I really love it on this show.
Right. This is the difficult one.
Uh-oh.
Do you think that Beck wanted to tell the truth?
Oh.
And Bareil was sent to the station by Opaka to strong-arm him into keeping quiet?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's dark. Again, I'm going to say we have no evidence that she was strategic in that way.
Yeah.
And if you were really going to strong arm somebody, I'm not sure you would send Vedek Bareil. You would send Kai Winn. No.
It was tragic, my child. He fell out of the airlock.
Yeah. If you really tried to pull this apart, it is a little questionable.
Yeah.
But I guess I hadn't thought so. This show is probably dark enough that, yeah, that could have been in the minds of the writers.
Right. They could have gone that dark.
Yeah.
It is something that I wouldn't see this show shying away from.
No.
But I do have one other scenario. See how this works. Beck calls Bareil to the station because he really was troubled about what happened, that he was effectively ordered to do this.
Yep.
Tells him that Opaka made him do it, that Bareil didn't know, but Beck tells him, and Bareil has trouble with it, doesn't accept it, hence the shouting. Then Beck kills himself to protect Opaka, and Bareil then looks into it and finds out himself the truth, and then covers it up to protect the Kai. So Bareil, in that scenario, ends up very innocent. All he was doing was protecting the reputation of the Kai, rather than being responsible for Beck's death.
I don't think he's responsible for Beck's death. So you're saying it could have happened that the argument they had where he was, and Bareil was telling him, no, you can't reveal that Opaka told you this, you have to do what she said. But you're saying that maybe the flip thing happened.
Yes.
And Bareil didn't know that at all.
Yes. He called Bareil to the station to tell him that Opaka told him to do it. And that was what caused the shouting. Maybe they were arguing because Bareil's take on it would be, she wouldn't do that. She's a figurehead for all of Bajor. And it was later that when Bareil looked into it, why he was erasing the files and things is because he realized it was true.
Well, I guess we will never know the details of that, but that way probably makes the most sense.
Yes, because we've seen in this episode how Bareil is a thoroughly decent person. Bareil would have to be a much darker character.
Right.
Had Bareil basically pressured Beck into killing himself.
I never thought that, I guess, that he pressured him into killing himself. I never did. He may have just applied a bunch of pressure to him that you can't reveal this information because of Kai Opaka and her importance to Bajor. That may have been the argument. I wish they did tell us what the argument was about, but they do leave that open. And I had thought that was the argument, was he was making that case that you can't reveal that Kai Opaka told you to do this because it will damage all of Bajor. And the guy just felt too guilty about what he had done. And so that's what caused him to kill himself.
Ah.
That's the way I had looked at it.
Yeah.
But I don't think Bareil knew. I think he went there because Beck called him.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And he had no idea until he got there. But what they argued about, who knows? He may have just been yelling at him for having revealed the location. We don't know. We don't have enough info.
Well, I think Beck, as he took responsibility for it, maybe he already planned this, that he was going to be the fall guy.
Possible.
And he was telling Bareil because he wanted for somebody to know he wasn't really a traitor.
Oh.
That he was just obeying orders.
Yeah. Wow.
It's pretty dark either way.
Yes.
I feel Beck is just another victim in this whole thing.
Yeah, he kind of is.
Well, it now seems like Opaka got what she deserved.
Oh, I loved her so much.
I guess it shows the issue that sometimes your heroes are a little bit flawed.
But they're also trying to make a point that she wasn't evil because she sacrificed her own child in this scenario to save others. I think that was an important part of the story.
True. Yes.
To convince you that she didn't do this selfishly.
Yeah. It wasn't out of spite, malice, or self-interest.
And I think in many cases, you can look at something like this and just think, man, that was not the smartest decision, like you were asking earlier, right? If we had done something different, it may have resulted in something better for Bajor. And sometimes you just have to recognize that people they don't always do the right thing. And it's not out of some evil nature.
Right.
It's just because they don't make a good decision.
Yeah.
They maybe panic and, they don't take all the things into account that they should, and they do something kind of rashly, and then it turns out really badly.
Yeah.
I'm sure she didn't feel great about it. Remember at the beginning of the show, Kira talked about her being in isolation and seeing no one?
Oh.
I wonder if that's why she was in isolation, that she was feeling the guilt from this.
Penitence for what she'd done.
Right.
Oh, nice.
And that also might be why she interpreted that prophecy the way she did, which is, this is the price I have to pay. I now sacrifice myself to go to the planet of the idiots and be stuck there forever.
That should have been the name of the episode.
Planet of Idiots. No, it was a moon. The moon of the idiots.
Moon of idiots.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. My final point is, and this is maybe an observation, it does seem to be Winn's modus operandi that she can pivot and flip instantly based on situations.
Yes.
If you look at the start of the season, she was all on board with the circle until the moment there was a question of where they were getting their arms from and the Cardassians being involved. And right before your eyes, it's almost like she took a step sideways and went, who are these guys? Who invited you?
Yeah.
And then managed to play that situation perfectly again to her advantage.
She's very opportunistic.
Yes.
She's all about self-preservation.
Very much so. Well, and she's got what she wanted.
She did. She got exactly what she wanted.
Okay, well, that wraps it up for me. I think I've overanalyzed this dark episode enough.
All right, well, let's go to women in the future.
Okay.
And what I would say about it is that Kai Winn is amazing.
Yes.
She's a terrifying spiritual leader.
That is a perfect word for it. Terrifying.
Yes. I was disappointed she never said blasphemy in this episode.
Oh.
She said it so many times in the previous episodes.
Missed opportunity.
I also would have liked to have seen her spend more time with Sisko because their dynamic is so good.
Oh, absolutely.
Kira didn't let her love for Bareil cloud her ability to find the truth.
Mm-hmm.
I wondered, though, if she actually hated him, would she have stopped at that first finding and not dug for the real truth? You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, did her love sort of force her to keep looking until she was happy with the result? Like, if it had been Winn that she found the thing about, would she have just stopped and gone, oh, well, she did it?
I don't know. I would expect she would keep digging because she is very moral in her standing. She will do the right thing. And the right thing is to chase this down to the end.
Well, I bring this thing up about her not letting her love cloud her job. Yeah. Because I think it would have been really easy for someone to write a female character as clouded by her love, which we've actually seen previously on this show. So I was impressed that it didn't happen here. This was a pretty solid story, and it allowed an honorable character to show that honor, even though the character was female. So I appreciated that. My only negative about women in the future was not enough Dax. Dax had like 2 lines, and that was it. And she was out.
Well, she got the docking clamps working again.
She did. Well, let's go to rating. Thumbs up, thumbs down, or neutral? What is your rating?
This can only be thumbs up. It's one of the best episodes of season 2.
Yeah, thumbs up, way up. I thought this was a really, really good episode. I think the only thing I didn't like was the 3-time use of the migraine trigger. It's like using a dream sequence, and it feels a little bit like a cheat. And they don't make any sense, so I'm not sure why the Vedeks keep going in there. It's like, what are you learning from those things?
I think it's just, it's drugs. They're just getting high.
I mean, they were just trying to show us that he was struggling with what to do.
I think he was conflicted about the future, so was using it multiple times to try and guide his path.
I think he was using it to try to determine if he should withdraw from the Kai choosing. I believe that he was waiting for the prophets to give him that answer. And they kind of did when Kira stabbed him, I guess, in the one. I do think that's why he kept going in there. But they never tell you anything. You never get a straight answer out of them. So,
yeah. Prophets need to be better. They need to give better answers.
Right.
But yeah, I think this was a great episode. The characterizations all those people are so good.
Yep, I agree.
And it was nice to actually see more of Bareil in this, building this character a little bit more. He is conflicted, but he is a good person.
Yeah, for sure.
I did like how Kira sort of accepted him and what he was doing. So even though it may not seem like the best thing, she understood it, at least. Because she loved Opaka as well.
Right. Because she could have very easily just said, hey, Opaka did it. This is what I found. Right? Yeah. She could have really easily done that. It would have been too late for the choosing, but she still could have done that to clear his name.
That is true.
All right. Well, that is it for Season 2, Episode 24. Come back next week for Episode 25. In the meantime, if you'd like to tell us your own overanalysis of this or any episode, or if you just want to say something nice, please email us at rebingeit@gmail.com or tweet us at rebingeit. Also, follow us at rebingeit on Twitter because I sometimes now like to live tweet the episodes as I work my way through them. But check us out on talkthroughmedia.com. You can leave feedback for us there and listen to all of the other awesome podcasts in our network.
Thanks for joining us on the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast.
That's it for me.
And that's it from me.